everyone. I'm Tom Moore from VikeFans.com, and we want to welcome you to our first edition of Vikings Mail Call with Pete Bercich. As most of you know, Pete's a former Minnesota Vikings linebacker, coach, and now the Vikings game day radio color analyst. And each week during the 2014 preseason through the playoffs, Pete will answer 3 burning questions from the fans. Pete, I want to welcome you to the show and ask you, how was that wind chill out at TCF Bank Stadium last Friday night?
It was actually pretty warm. I got to go on the field a little bit before the game, and there's no question they'll be dealing with the elements. That west side of the stadium is wide open. It's the side with the big jumbotron that's open. So it's going to be interesting to see all throughout the course of the year what the weather has to do and how it's going to affect these games coming up.
Well, it had to be like going back to college in South Bend when you were playing outside. How was it like seeing football outdoors?
It was good. I think everybody likes it. It's funny, you talk to fans and they say, oh, I remember back in the day at the Met and this and that. It's like, all right, well, we'll see in December who shows up. We'll see in December who's out there with their shirts off. You know what I mean? And so we're looking forward to it. You know, nothing like my college stadium with the big TV in the end zone. We didn't have that in South Bend, Indiana. They went back when I was there. It was old school and pretty crowded, but it was good. It's just a nice facility. It's a great field. Top notch all the way around.
Well, are you ready to talk some Vikings football?
Let's go.
All right, well, let's get started with our first question from Sarah in Arizona. And she asks, Pete, last year the offensive line looked less than stellar in pass protection at times, and I couldn't tell if they'd improved during the first preseason game. Should I be worried about the health of Matt Castle and Teddy Bridgewater this season as they stand back in the pocket?
We talked a little bit about this earlier. I think Matt Khalil is going to have to come back and have a good year. I think he was up and down a little bit last year, but I think a lot of that had to do with his health. He's the kind of guy that even when he's nicked up, he'll play nicked up. And as a coaching staff, when we have a player who's less than 100%, the last thing you want to do is publicize it or let everybody know about it. Yeah, you do have to include people on the injury report, but if there's something going on, beside that, I think he was struggling with pneumonia and some other things that, you have to learn to hang in there. You have to, learn to bounce back and I think have a better season this year than a sophomore season. I think the one thing that did stand out is that the blocking schemes are completely different. A lot more man-to-man blocking up front, and when you have that kind of blocking style up front, you're going to really, I think, get more play out of your play action. I think your play action is going to be a lot more valuable, and I think with Adrian Peterson back there, of course, every defense is going to honor that play action because he's so much of a part of the offense, and if you can do that, run the ball well, and play action, you can have up to 2 backs in protection, so that's a total of 7. So that's, I think, a really good thing. So I think that the ability to play fake, some of the man blocking that they do is going to help them in pass protection as well.
I also noticed on Friday night that we saw a lot of pulling guards and even the center pulling out there. How's that going to help the running game or even the screen game?
Well, what you're going to get is if you look at North Turner and his offense and the guys that he's had, he deals with guys that are a little bit undersized. Yeah, guys like Hardwick and some of them that played for him in the past, and what they do is they depend on angles. And I really like that style. I think the San Francisco 49ers run a style that's similar to that. No more of this, it's not going to be this zone offense where everybody turns and runs one way or the other like they did in Washington. And it's not going to be kind of like the old Brad Childress Philadelphia where they're double teaming up to the second level. And the reason teams don't always do this is it requires smart players and it requires a lot of coaching and a lot of game planning. And so it's not very easy to implement that kind of system on a week-in and week-out basis. But, again, North Turner's been around for a long time. I think one of the big differences this year is that the players have really bought into his system. You talk to the players about North Turner, they have complete 100% confidence in everything that he says and does. They're willing to go out there and execute what he's trying to do. And when you look at our guards with Fusco, Sullivan, Johnson, they're not road graders. They're not the kind of guys that are going to be driving 320-pound nose tackles off the ball. They're going to have to work with angles. And with this offense and with the scheme and the man blocking, they're going to make sure that these guys all are in favorable positions where they're not going to have to just grind somebody out to football. So I'm excited. I think it's the right system for the right group at the right time.
As we turn to our second question, Kentis from Reno, Nevada asks, Pete, based on what you've seen and heard so far in Vikings training camp, who do you think steps up to take the safety spot next to Harrison Smith in the starting lineup?
Well, I think looking into the season, if there's, you look at the 22 starting positions on the field, that may be the one position I think that's truly up for competition. You have Jamarcus Sanford, who isn't healthy, and he's a physical type player. You need him to definitely get healthy. Robert Blanton had an excellent opportunity to cement that spot going into camp. He's not, healthy either. And the old saying is you can't make the club in the tub. You have to be out there. And what makes one guy laugh will make another guy cry. Take a look at Kurt Coleman and what he did with the interception and his ability to come in and step in and do some good things. So he for sure took advantage of that opportunity. I mean, he stepped up and did a very, very good job. So I think the coaches know who they'd like to see at that spot, and I think Blanton is that guy. I think he would be the guy, all things being equal, that they would want. But right now, I think it's still an open competition.
Are they looking at Blanton because he's kind of a cover safety type?
I think so. I mean, I think they're pretty familiar with him. He's got good size, 6'1", 200. But, you got other guys like Exum, who's a young guy, Mistral Raymond. Wow, I think he had a concussion. So you have a lot of injuries at that position. And when guys are falling out like that, it's just really wide open. But when all things being equal, teams always like to see guys that they draft, do well. And I think, like I said, Robert Blanton is probably the guy that they would like to see start at that spot.
Okay, we're going to stay on defense for our final question. And Nodak from the Twin Cities asks, Pete, early on, who would you say are the front runners for the starting linebacker spots, and who plays in the middle?
That's a very, very good question. Jasper Brinkley had his chance. I think Audie Cole's been doing some time with the ones. I think, with the guys that he's going to have in front of him, whoever that position is going to be, you're going to be pretty much a two-down linebacker, because I think Chad Greenway's going to come in and he's going to be the guy for nickel. Same thing with Anthony Barr, although they'll be moving him around. But, I think Jasper Brinkley will probably end up being the guy that's going to get that spot. I think he's lost some weight. He looks really good. He moves really well. He's been there before. But don't count out, Audie Cole. I think Audie Cole's going to get a shot this week, or at least this weekend against the Arizona Cardinals, to see if he can cement that spot.
The guy who's been kind of quiet is Mike Mowdy. People expect a lot out of him, but we haven't heard his name much so far.
Yeah, Mike Mowdy, I think, is another guy who I think has a good chance. He's a heck of a good linebacker. I mean, what got him drafted so low, obviously, the 3 knee surgeries that he had is going to affect him. And he's been moved around a little bit, played a little Sam, played a little Will. So they're dancing him around a little bit. He's going to need to play some solid special teams, but don't ever count him out. I mean, he's a tough kid. He's a great kid. Very, very good athlete. And I think coming from Penn State and being a linebacker from Penn State, there's something to be said about that.
Sure.
I think Monty's going to step up and I think be around for quite some time. And for a guy like him, just because of how he got into the NFL, he may have to wait. Jeff, he was a teammate of mine, and until Jack Barrio got hurt, he didn't really start. He just played special teams. I think Mike's might have to be the same way. He's just got to hang in there, keep battling, and he'll get his chance. And I think when he does, he'll never look back.
Yeah, it's funny. Even Gerald Hodges flashed a little bit on Friday night.
Yeah, he did. He made a nice play with special teams, which is important. I think Gerald's a guy from last year that kind of fell off the radar. Pretty high round draft pick, very athletic kid. But he did show up in the opening kickoff, which is great. He and Larry Dean came up and had a big tackle, so that's good for him. And, is he a Mike linebacker kind of a guy? I don't think so. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to play in space. So he'll, maybe back up Chad Greenway or get some looks at Will. But again, if you're not one of the starting 3, you're going to be playing a lot of special teams. And even the Mike linebacker might even get a little bit too, since, like we said earlier, he's going to be a 2-down position.
Well, with that brings a wrap to Pete Bercich's Viking Mail Call for this week. And don't forget that Pete will be on the radio and television simulcast of the Vikings preseason game against the Arizona Cardinals back out at TCF Bank Stadium at 7:30 p.m. on Saturday. So tune him in and start sending your questions in for Pete to answer next week. You can also keep up to date on both NFL and college happenings at Pete's new football website at PeteBFootball.com or follow him on Twitter at Pete Bercich. So until next week, I'm Tom Moore.
And I'm Pete Bercich.
So long, everyone.